welcome back everybody to another video. We got a good one here for you all today. I want to first and foremost say that this video is going to spark some controversy within the church, especially within the more of the traditional church, right? The church that has been or stayed the same with not a lot of changes. But you know what? I'm excited to bring this to light. I can relate to this like 100% from a first person point of view. And I'm excited for this video. First of all, shout out to gospel producers. They're always putting out great things. I have been following them for a long time. They have a Get Loop, the Loop Elements Pro plugin. Oh man, you guys got to check it out, especially if you're trying to practice, or you're trying to use it live, or you're trying to loop in your DAW. Like, it's just a lot of different ways you can use this. I'm not, by the way, I'm not sponsored by this video. I'm simply just gonna react to it. But I know great and quality work, especially for plugins, when I see it, right? And when I use it myself. So gospel producers, shout out to gospel producers. Let's go ahead and get into this video. Let me make sure that everything is good quickly. Yeah, let's go ahead and get into this video, because we have lots to talk about and lots to go over. All right, here we go.
Jermaine Dupri, one of the legendary producers, engineers, you know Jermaine Dupri, Mr. Welcome to Atlanta.
That's right, Jermaine Dupri is a beast. I can't even begin to talk about Jermaine Dupri. He's an amazing musician, artist. Most recently for the young folk nowadays. Most recently that I can think of right now, he was part of that Mooney Long song, Twin, Where Have You Been? Nobody knows me like that. He's part of that song. That beat goes crazy. I mean, the triangle in that beat has me in the chokehold, and I've told some of my friends about it. But let's go ahead and let's continue to shout out to Jermaine Dupri, by the way.
Man, that guy has been an icon, cultural icon,
yes,
mogul,
yes,
hip hop, R&B industry for decades.
Yes, he has.
All of us know that name. It's a household name, and we're all familiar with that. So there's this video that popped up this week, and somebody shared it with me, said, man, you should definitely check this out. And so Jermaine was basically saying that the youth of today in R&B, he said that R&B doesn't sound the way that it used to sound, or it's not as dope as it used to be, because the kids, the youth, the musicians of today, they didn't grow up in church, or they're not going to church, or they're not a part of the church environment. I agree. So I thought it was a really interesting conversation. So let's kind of take a listen at what Jermaine said, then I'll give you my thoughts on it. This is I found this clip on this podcast. I think these guys are called Illinois. So let's check it to see what these guys are saying about it.
That church band and grooming, like B. Cox came from the church, right?
Right.
Jodeci comes from church.
Right.
Like, so when you listen to that soul, that soul that you think is soul, it's that's coming from over there. Yeah, it's an added piece of information that if you're gonna make these records, it's hard to beat Jodeci when you don't have that element.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting, conversation, because like he said, like some of the groups and stuff that made like 90s, early 2000s R&B, these guys were church boys. You know what I'm saying? They all grew up in the church. They all cultivated their talent and their gift in the church. There was a video where I watched, I think it was R&B Money podcast with Tank and all this stuff, and he was interviewing the guys from Commission. And
I'm gonna stop here real quick. He said something that I want to go back to that kind of blew my mind, and I just completely lost everything else that was said. But he said something here that blew my mind, and I'm gonna pause it as he's saying it.
These guys are saying about it.
That church band and grooming, like B. Cox came from the church, right?
Right.
Jodeci comes from church.
Right.
Like, so when you listen to that soul, that soul that you think is soul, It's that's coming from over there. Yeah, it's an added piece of
the added piece of information. He is right on the money with this. It's absolutely true. I believe that when we go to church, especially me, I'm a church guy, I'm a PK, and a minister. For those of you that know me, music director, worship leader, whatever, it doesn't matter. I just love to serve God in any way we can. But to be honest, what he's saying here, it's crazy. This is crazy to me. It says it's an added piece of information. Yes, that added piece of information, I believe, is the fact that Jesus died on the cross and resurrected on the third day and forgave all of our sins. He washed our sins with his blood. And because of him, we have access to the presence of God. And for those of us, I mean, I don't care what you say. This is not up for debate. For those of us that have experienced the presence of God, for those of us that have been able to be in church, grow up in church, we know that that's the piece of information. And once you're in, you got that, man, you start to feel like, man, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve what I'm doing. I'm not worthy of any of this, but his grace is so amazing that covers it all. That's the little bit of preaching that I'm going to do, but it's so true. It's so true. We get that from that added piece of information. And, you know, I'm going to fast forward here to what gospel producers were saying here. So here we go.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting, you know, conversation because, like he said, like some of the groups and stuff that made like 90s, early 2000s R&B, these guys were church boys. You know what I'm saying? They all grew up in the church. They all, you know, cultivated their talent and their gift in the church. There was a video where I watched, I think it was R&B Money podcast with Tank and all this stuff, and he was interviewing the guys from Commission, and then they were talking about how like they, Tank and all of those guys like that, were talking about how like they drew their influence from them, from Commission.
In my mind, it's Commission that led to 90s R&B. This whole thing that, you know, everybody goes back to this very.
I agree. For those of you that don't know who commissioned this, I suggest you look them up. Man, their songs still to this day make me cry. Their songs still, like, you had Marvin Sapp, you had Fred Hammond, you had a bunch. It was a group that just loved the Lord. Weren't perfect by any way, shape, or form, but there were great musicians, great psalmists, and some of the greatest songs were written when they were together, and not only when they were together, because I'm a really big fan of Marvin Sapp as well. One of my favorite songs from him is "You Are God Alone." Believe it or not, it's better than to me. I mean, I like Never Would Have Made It, but yeah. And Fred Hammond, man, the Chicago concert where he had Joanne Rosario, and man, Fred Hammond, to me, still to this day, Fred Hammond is a genius. That man is a genius. Great bass player, great producer. He's just this talent. Like we're talking back to our church legends, right? Like, and the good thing I love about Fred Hammond is that he has always been so nonchalant and true to himself, even following Christ, right? Like I remember one of the first times he came out, he had a loop earring, and I was like, what? And that was back in the day when that was horrible. You couldn't do that. You could go to hell. They would send you straight to hell for doing that. And I mean, those kinds of things, I grew up and I was like, man, like, they shifted. They were definitely a part of shifting how gospel worship music was, and R&B, as we can see here. R&B, they give a lot of credit to them. I give a lot of credit to them, especially me, the way I produce, the certain things that I sound. I'm more CCM now, but I bring that R&B style. So I can totally agree with this. Let's keep listening.
Special time. For our generation, for
the essence.
The essence of what our R&B is. It goes back to Commission.
It does.
I
agree.
It was a church group. You know what I'm saying?
There were a church group.
Iconic church group, 80s and 90s that ruled the airways, but they were influencing a lot of 90s R&B.
Running Back to You. Look up.
So
like for those of you that want to know one Fred Hammond song with Commission, Running Back to You. running back to you.
Is talking about. Let's keep this dialogue flowing.
You don't have that. You don't have that soul. You don't have that.
That's an element. So it's like when people be saying, "Yo, music ain't the way it used to be." Like I just posted my new Anthony Hamilton record is coming out on October 4th. Yeah, Queen, right? Yeah. Anthony Hamilton comes from
church.
Church.
Yeah, it's church.
You're not gonna get that's in his voice. Yeah. You ain't just getting that from being on the internet. That ain't getting ready to happen.
That's what Jermaine Dupri had to say about things. I mean, he believes the church influence provided artists with a certain, soulfulness, step in today's R&B. Yeah. And I gotta say,
he right.
Yeah,
I agree. I totally agree.
I agree with him too.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That there's been a lack of.
I agree with him, and it's not because I still play at the church and I'm still at the church. It's not because I want to, give credit to, but hey, give to Caesar what's to Caesar, right? Like I agree. The church produces a lot of, and then nowadays, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I really want this video to finish. There's a lot of information that was given here. But a lot of it comes, like a lot of these musicians, all of these artists still to this day, they are artists, but they'll go to church, So, some of them, because music is a little off, at least to me, right? I listen to it, I enjoy it, but some of it is still off. But let's continue on.
The influence of the church, and so a lot of people don't know this when it comes to like the kind of connection between church and music and how it has influenced pop culture for the last 100+ years. Classical music, the classical music era, that we talk about, the Baroque era and all of these different eras of music when you study music history and all of that stuff. Every one of us had those music history classes, you know what I'm saying? We learned about all these different eras. All of that music was predominantly Christian, you know what I mean? Right. And it was all, centered around Roman Catholicism and all those different areas and all of that stuff like that. And I'm not saying that there was no secular music within that thing, but it was primarily Christian music.
But even and I want to add to that, even the secular music that was so-called secular music, it was more of love, of a guy expressing his love for a female or his love for a cat or a dog. Like it was more of a feeling of an emotion. And then some of it was a little dirty. I was actually listening to an old back in Shakespeare times song where it sounds a little bit like the reggaeton we listen to now. And I was kind of like taken back. I was like, they had this back in the day. It's true. They did. Let's keep on watching.
And Christian influence in the Renaissance period and all that stuff was Christian influence on culture. You know what I'm saying? And so when you rewind that and bring that into today's time, you start to see the influences and inflections about, where jazz and gospel and all of that, jazz was influenced by gospel was influenced by jazz and blues and all of these different genres kind of rooted out of, the gospel thing. And so, yes, a lot of today's producers, a lot of today's musicians, a lot of today's, tour musicians, all of those things, they all kind of came from the church. I know my guy, Kyrie Taylor, I think is his last name. Kyrie, he's Beyonce's musician, their band, them boys are church. They're all church musicians.
Yeah.
And so I really agree with the stance of that influence. And so because there's been a decline overall in just church attendance.
Yes. Church attendance, interest in church, entrance or loss of interest, I should say, in church, loss of interest in what the Bible has to say and what mom and grandma and grandpa used to tell us. And there's been sort of like a rebellion kind of, I don't need that, or kind of like, man, you can't make me believe that. And some of it is, you have to blame the church. Some of it, I'm sorry, some of it you have to blame, some of the leaders in the church, some of the upfront face of the church. But that's neither here nor there. Let's keep on watching.
Saying especially in the 2020s, you know what I'm saying, in this inflection point that we went through and that we're going through. Today, I want to introduce to you Loop Elements.
Oh, here we go. This is the Loop Element commercial. I'm gonna let it play out because I'm using his video, and it's a great product. For those of you that are starting to produce or starting to record and starting to do all these different things like that, let me tell you something. If you start to invest in certain things, start to invest in things that are going to work for you, right? And I believe that this loop element is going to help you, especially if you want to practice or rehearse, or if you're trying to do something live, like I was telling you earlier. But I'll let him explain more of that, and I'm going to let this play out. You guys can fast forward if you want to, but this is a great plugin.
Represents a very innovative new way of using loops. And guess what? It's standalone not only as a plugin, but it's also standalone outside of the DAW, which means you can now use loop elements in your live performance. This isn't just a plugin. It's the ultimate tool for creatives and producers.
I think that's great.
Layering loops, creating click track, creating beats, building arrangements, soundscapes, Loop Elements Pro gives you the power to create without limits. Loop Elements Pro is now available. Go get it now. With that influence kind of dying, you're seeing that come into what is happening in the mainstream, because a lot of people don't know and don't ascribe to it, or don't really understand the aspect of that Christian culture directly impacts secular culture, whether we want to agree with that or not. So let's keep seeing what these boys got to say. I'm gonna listen to a little bit more of this, and then we'll kind of move on to the next thing.
Hey, Ashley Nicole was sitting here, and she was telling us how she started off in church, right? And in that interview, I was like, "Do you know?" By a lot of musicians and singers and stuff not going to church, there's certain notes they don't even know. Instead of having a coach, church was the coach.
And you know what? It's true. Because the church will be the first one to tell you, hey, honey, you need to, well, the church back in the day will be the first one to tell you, honey, you can serve somewhere else with us, honey. Like, let's leave that to the minstrels and the people that have the talent for that specific instrument, or whether singing or whatever it is. The back in the day, the church would tell you. Today, they won't say anything. A lot of the churches won't say anything. They'll just, at least in the experience that I've had, they'll put everybody and their mama in there. But hey, to each his own, right?
Notes and know your range in church.
You learn soul. You learn me.
Yes. So that's a good point right there.
I agree.
What I'm saying, to make, and I shared this on our Hangout podcast, and I had with Kenneth Leonard, and I think I had Jamel Kimber on that pod. Church is that space of obscurity that you get to kind of grow in and learn in as a musician, as a creative. You know what I mean? Like, all of us, at some point, especially myself, like, I spent 30 plus years serving in the church as a church musician, as a media director. You know what I'm saying? Being a church musician, I learned how to perform music, how to write music.
Yeah, same. I can relate to that.
Music, how to produce music, how to create tracks, how to do all those things. And then when I started getting into the media aspect of what we were doing in our church, then I learned how to build websites. I built two websites for the two campuses that we had at our church. That taught me web design. That taught me HTML. That taught me coding. That taught me all of those things from working inside of the church. You know what I'm saying? Like, being the media director taught me sound, taught me mixing, taught me all of those different things like that. You know what I mean? Taught me how to use a camera. You know what I mean? Like, I started my YouTube channel doing stuff for showing how I was incorporating technology into the church. So I really think it's a dope thing to understand. And I've said this over the years on many, many occasions in many different ways, that, you know what I'm saying, church musicians are superheroes. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think if we leaned into that, and
kind of agree. I have to agree, right? As PK, and growing up in the church, like, you have to pick up the slack everywhere, right? And then I'm from Philly. For those of you that don't know, I'm from Philly. So you get to see in Philadelphia, is like, there's a lot of musicians, and literally in every corner, right? But then still, some of the churches are suffering from musicians, right? And you have to, because they'll double book. Oh, I have to play over here. I have to play over there. Oh, I can't make it today. And sometimes you get, canceled. So you have to you have to pick up the slack everywhere. So I've seen, I've literally seen like singers that would have to go and play and learn how to play drums, and drummers who would have to push themselves to learn a string instrument or a keyboard or something like that, just to pick up the slack, right? And you get to go around every part as a Christian musician or as a church musician. You get to go into the media. You get, sometimes you have to figure out, like, how am I going to turn the mixer on? Sometimes they never had a experience doing that. And, you know, the church is a great teaching. It's like a great campground to learn and to be molded, right? Because it molded me. Like, it has molded me, and it continues to mold me. And one of the things that I have to say here is that musicians, we should always be on student mode, right? Like, we should always take an opportunity to learn something new. But let's continue on with the video.
That we have, you know what I mean? Will continue to blossom, because you're that guy. I've said this before. You're that guy or that gal that 5 minutes before a church service, the praise and worship leader came to you and said, "You know what? I'm feeling the spirit shifting."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're gonna sing "How Great Is Our God" this morning. We're gonna sing "Alabaster Box" by CeCe Winans.
Oh man.
Like, oh, and so you, at any given point, you have to have that repertoire like ready in your head, and even if you don't, you can go like put your AirPods in. In 5 minutes, listen to it, and be ready to play that song as soon as it starts. You know what I mean? That's a superpower.
Yeah, that's
true. Superpower that I think a lot of us don't lean into and don't understand, and we devalue ourselves as church musicians, or we devalue ourselves as gospel musicians or gospel producers, when it's so many different things and so many different aspects that come and go along with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, gospel producers are heavy arrangers. Sometimes we over arrange. You know what I mean? A lot of times we over arrange.
Yes,
but
that is true.
There are things that in chord structures and arrangements and sound choices and sound design that the world covets. When they do tours, when they do all this stuff, they're calling gospel cats to do these tours. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
They're not calling regular R&B musicians. They're calling the church drummers.
They're
calling the church because they got the chops. They got the
that's
licks
true. That's
to
true.
make those shows interesting. You know what I'm saying? A little bit more of this, and let's see what we're saying.
You know how to make it feeling. You know how to come from the gut. That diaphragm.
That's funny.
You know
what I'm saying? And if you can't sing at church,
that's cool.
No, that's true. That's true.
If we was to go, if all the R&B singers today have to go to church to sing, a lot of people wouldn't make it.
Nah,
because auto-tune.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's ain't.
Well, okay, yeah, that's true. A lot of people wouldn't make it because of autotune, but also nowadays they have incorporated autotune into the singing. It's tasteful. It doesn't sound like a computer robot, right? Because the people that doing it know how to do it, or they're not necessarily going for that sound. But they have incorporated the autotune into live. The technology is crazy right now. Like, and it's gonna continue to get even crazier. Let's go ahead, continue.
Stuff, but you know, I think that's the value that I would add to that conversation, and that there's a lot of underestimation on how church, you know, in our Christian culture and our Christian music and worship and production culture influences the secular world. And I think what Jermaine said and what these guys are saying is a prime example of it. But I'd like to know what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything on this video. I know this is going to pop and spark some controversy, because there are some people, right? And let me make this more personal. There are some people still in the church that believe that church musicians should not play for secular artists, and I totally disagree with that. Like, you don't see a Christian doctor only working or helping or healing Christian people, right? You don't see a Christian mechanic only working on Christian people's car. And the Bible says that everything we do, we should do it to glorify God, right? So that means that whatever they're doing it to glorify the Lord to whoever they're doing and however they're doing it, right? I believe that you should know yourself, right? Like there's definitely certain musicians that I know. There's definitely certain musicians that I know that they could, fall into the trap and kind of give in to those peer pressures and stuff like that. And but if your walk is strong with the Lord, I know of other musicians and I know them personally, that they play for secular artists and they are being able to maintain themselves. It's a 9 to 5 to them, because that's really what it is. It's just a 9 to 5. And I believe that if you can maintain strong, if you can like really stand and make a difference, then do it, go for it. And you know why? I want to go to this. I want to go to this comment down here where what is that? Sean Navarrete. Sean Navarrete. I don't know. Hey, whatever. So Sean Navarrete, thank you. Shout out to Sean Navarrete. He said, so why haven't they stayed with the church and given that talent to blow up God's word through music? What has the church not provided to keep them there? I'm going to be honest with you. This is my response here. Most importantly, the way leaders in the church treat musicians is crazy, right? But after that, the church do not often pay, right? And when they do pay, they make excuses as to how the budget, and I understand some churches are smaller, some churches are bigger. I understand that, right? But the church doesn't pay. The church doesn't say, here, boom, even to their musicians in the church. Now, they'll invite a band and pay them. They'll invite a band from somewhere else. They'll pay them. They'll invite Juan or George or Lopez from down the street, and they'll pay them. But the church, the people that are in their church, members of the church that are always there, they won't pay them. They'll come up with excuses with the budget, all these different things. Fortunately, I've been able to be compensated for what I do more recently. Before, it was often more the times that I didn't get paid than I did get paid. But although we don't do it for that, most of us don't do it for the money. It is a very important, vital part, because they are leaving or going to different places to take it as a 9 to 5, right? Because it's what they love to do, and it's a talent that God gave them. I believe wholeheartedly that if you have the opportunity to take a 9 to 5 doing what you love to do, whether it be playing the drums or cooking, whatever it is that you need to do or whatever it is that you love to do, I say take that 9 to 5, right? As long as you're always willing and able to just glorify Jesus, glorify God with what you're doing. So that's gonna be the end of it. It's gonna be the end of this video. Just subscribe, like, comment. You have anything to say? You disagree with anything that I'm saying? Argue with me in the comments. Just write a comment down there, share this video. Let's put this conversation on blast. Let's put this so that people are more aware of what's going on, and maybe let's bring some of these people back to church, right? Let's bring them back to the Lord and back to their roots, right? And so that they can understand certain things. But anyways, I love you. God bless you. I hope you all continue on and never give up, never surrender, like my boy Nick 830 says. Shout out to Nick 830. But I love you guys. God bless.